All right, welcome back to Open Bible, Open Life. I'm Pastor Kyle, and today I'm joined with Mark Clark.
Yes, sir.
All the way from California,
All the
coming
way.
to Two Cities Church.
Yes, sir. Glad
Now-
to be here, man. What a great church service this morning.
Well,
Seriously.
yeah, actually,
North
let's start
Carolina,
there.
This is crazy here.
Let's
bro.
give me your observations. We talked about this just a little bit. Give me your observations of our church. We're actually recording this.
Amazing.
Amazing.
Yeah.
Say more in a second, but hold on. But I'm saying we're in between. You did 9 o'clock, 11 o'clock.
Yeah.
You're about to come back and do 5 o'clock.
What?
But this is
Is that a thing?
one more service,
What
man.
in the world? I got to talk to my agent.
But what are your thoughts on our church? Encourage
so
us, because
sick.
you shared some encouraging things with me.
Yeah, I mean, what I love about you as a leader is you're alive, you're ready to go, you have a lot of fun, you don't take yourself too serious,
Yeah.
and there needs to be more leaders like that, more churches like that, and your church reflects that. They're into it, they're ready to go, they're
Love it.
engaged, they're on point, they seem on mission. So it was great response. Like a lot of churches you go to, you try to tell a joke or something, and they stare at you like, you know, what is this? I thought
Yeah.
this was church, you know,
Yeah.
and I'm supposed to be bored and snoring and get up there and tell a couple stories, and they were in and
I love
ready
it,
to
dude.
go and clapping and amen. And so good job. That's you. A leader builds the culture of a church, right? So, that's always a reflection on the leader and what they're building. So great job.
Well, I appreciate
Yeah.
you being here, man.
Yeah.
And so one more service tonight. Here we go, dude.
And you're alive. I'll just say this for your audience. I mean, you guys know this because you watch this pod, but or listen to it. You are a live wire. Like when I arrived yesterday, I was tired. I got in at 1 o'clock in the morning. I get up in the morning, we're going golfing at the golf club that you're super excited about. And I get there, and the first thing I see, I'm dead. I'm drinking coffee, and I see you with your arms in the air and your little pink golf shirt,
Yeah,
just
that's
like Mark. Let's take it all. Let's
my
go.
little pink
And
golf shirt.
Yeah. No,
It was actually a light orange, but that's okay.
Yeah. And but then every hole you were like, you could have, if this doesn't work out, you should be a tour guide, because this hole was constructed in 1737 around
You
this
keep changing
acreage
the
of
dates.
whatever. Who knows what the dates are? But
Yeah,
the
yeah.
point is, you're telling me every nuance anyway. And I just love that passion, because so many
Yes.
people are just duds
Oh.
in this life.
Forget
Just
it.
Duds, man. Actually, not to talk about the book,
But to talk about it, just briefly, just go ahead.
The subtitle, How to Find Identity, Purpose, and Joy in a Disenchanted World. My whole thing is we are living in a disenchanted, we want to take all the enchantment away.
That's right.
Beauty doesn't matter. Magic doesn't matter.
We live
I'm
inside of a box.
No,
all there
let's
is.
go.
Yeah,
Let's
yeah.
go. Let's be enchanted. Let's be like, we have this moment, this day. Tomorrow's not promised. We're all going to die tomorrow. Let's suck the marrow out of life and go.
Let's
And
go.
I meet so many people just like,
I know.
hopefully in 10 years something good happens and I'll get the grandkids in order. It's like, what are we doing? So I just love how you're like,
Oh,
get it
let's
now.
go, dude.
All right.
Okay, now
Enough about you.
Hey,
Let's talk about me.
Was it my father-in-law told me this funny line? Enough of me talking about me. How about you talk about me a little bit? Yeah. Isn't that a great line? Okay.
That's good.
We're not going to revisit your story because
Yeah.
we did that on the last podcast.
Sure.
We're going to dive into this book for a second. But you are from Canada.
Yes, sir.
I wanted to just know, you didn't know any of these questions I was going to ask you. I didn't even know the question I'm going to ask you.
Well,
I'm coming up with this.
podcast. You
I know,
think
here
they
we
send
go.
the questions ahead of time, but clearly.
But I want the
Yeah.
chaos of potential of you not knowing and me
Chaos
not
of-
knowing what's going to
yeah.
happen. Here we go. Okay.
Okay.
First question. How did you feel about the potential of Canada becoming the 51st state?
Oh my goodness. Well, I'll tell you
I
what.
want to hear what you think when you hear Trump say something like that. I just
Yeah.
want to hear real quick.
Yeah.
As a Canadian, how does a Canadian hear that?
Well, okay. So how does a Canadian
Yeah,
hear it,
that's
or how
what
do
I
I hear it?
No,
Okay.
both,
As
but
a
sorry,
Canadian hears it as this is nuts.
Yes.
And we belong to the British Empire, and we have a long history of
Yeah.
very proud people.
Yeah.
It's like we're a country that the population of Canada. So it's the biggest landmass, I think, in the world other than Russia. But I think
you're right.
we might beat Russia. I'm not really sure as a country, but it has the same population of California, 40 million people. So you have all of California living in the biggest landmass in the world, and they're all lined up against the U.S. border because the weather. And you go north, it's like, you're still killing caribou and whatnot up there,
Alberta,
whatever.
Is that far north?
Well, Alberta, they're all provinces across.
Okay.
Do I need to draw a map? Do you want to?
No, I just
Listen, Americans, y'all know your geography is
I've
not
only
good.
been to
It's not good, guys.
I've been to Toronto.
There's a lot of
Vancouver,
ethnocentricity
and
down here.
Banff.
Yeah.
That's
You're like, a map? There's other places in the world? So anyway, all the major cities are lined up on the bottom, right at the American border.
Okay.
Yes, right there.
I understand that.
Yeah. So you got 40 million people there.
Yeah.
We are proud people, British history. We got our own stuff going on. And then so for that, it's like, okay, this is crazy. Now for me, I was hoping that would happen because I'm trying to get a green card
Come
right
on,
now.
dude. I know you
and
are.
I need my immigration to
You're like,
work
this-
out,
this-
man.
I don't know what's
Let's
happening to those
go.
40 million people, but for me,
But
this
for
would
me
really
personally, if you're
work.
asking me, I live in California now. I love it. And anyway, so it was fine for me. But yeah, Canadians were a little perturbed by it for sure.
Oh yeah.
Oh
dude.
yeah. No, they're not massive. And the interesting thing is, I don't know how political your podcast get, and you can edit later, but there was a election going on at the time, and there was a guy running on the Conservative Party.
Pierre.
Whatever.
He's got that famous.
He's got the apple.
Story.
Classic. So, so that's funny actually. Pierre Trudeau and then Pierre Polonneau or whatever his name is.
Yeah.
Anyway, so good conservative talking points, and he'd get up and eat his apples.
He's kind of
the common man shtick,
exactly.
all of that. Anyways, common sense politics. So he would do that thing, and everyone's kind of like, oh yeah, conservative. Maybe we do that because we've been living in this kind of more liberal politically for a long time. And then just before the election, Trump decided to do the 51st state thing, which then forced him.
And calls Governor Trudeau several times.
Right. And then that forces the conservative dude to now go, no, I don't like Trump. What are you talking about? And now he's looking. So then it was done.
Interesting.
It was done.
I had heard that. I didn't know how it all worked out.
So they went liberal again. So they got a new guy, Mark Carney or something. So that's why I'm just saying, look, my friend from Arkansas, when he moved to California, I was telling this earlier, his whole family was like, I can't believe you're moving to California. It's pagan. It's blah, blah, blah. And it's crazy. And when I moved from Vancouver to California, my friends were like, why are you moving to the Bible Belt, bro? So it's just a different perspective on worldview and secularism. And
last question on Canada, because I genuinely know this. Canada, you've got French speaking, English speaking.
Yes.
How do the French speaking and English speaking areas view each other?
Wow. Okay.
Because you got Montreal.
Quebec is a province that's French, and then you have New Brunswick, and they're pretty French. The French are a little, just like a minority in a country would, they're a little like, if you go into their territory and you try to go to Tim Hortons and order something in English, they're like, you got to order in French.
They're very proud of their language.
Yeah, of course. So bilingual country, cereal boxes, but most. I have no data on this. I would say 90%, 80% of Canadians don't speak French.
You speak no French.
I can say like Je m'appelle Mark. I think I'm Mark. My name is Mark. So I can do like vert is green. Because the crayons.
Yeah, dude, you don't know any French.
You do French to like grade 10 and then you're out.
Okay.
And everyone stops.
Okay.
So anyway, great country. Great people.
Great.
But
it's not that often. We've had a lot of people on this podcast.
Yeah.
We've not had many Canadians on here.
Yeah.
I don't want to go back through your whole story because we did it last time. I don't hear that. Okay. We're here today.
Yes, sir.
To talk about this book.
Okay.
Third in a trilogy. Is there going to be a fourth?
It would kind of kill the trilogy title if there was a fourth. But
so we're done because I know you love to write.
Yeah, no, I do love to write. I'm writing a fourth book right now. I don't know what to call it. There's a couple of different,
but probably not Problem Love.
Well, there's some people who think actually this one would make a lot of sense out of the problem titles because it's a lot of the book is about grace. Some of the stuff I preached about this morning. So it's kind of the problem of grace is almost. Kind of it's sitting right there for you on the T where it's like this is the one that actually
we've got problem of God, problem of Jesus. Do you see a book problem of the Holy Spirit?
Great question.
To deal with all the charismatic questions, to deal with
it feels a little too Christian for me. So the nature of these books is like to try to obviously Christian audience is 95% of the audience, but to have non-Christians and skeptics read it. So there's a lot of people that ask me that question. And in fact, this book started out almost like, if you really wanted to get technical, you could call it almost the problem of the spirit with a small s, because it's like the human spirit, the soul. That's what this whole book's about, the life of the soul, right? Identity, joy, purpose, suffering, death. What does it mean to be human? How do you flourish versus flounder in life in a world like this? And so it started out almost like, well, the answer to the question of these things is the spirit, of course, the spirit of God enlivening the spirit of the human person. And so the spiritual journey that we're all on is kind of what the problem of life is. But the Greek word for life is psyche and all the rest of it. So it kind of started there, but I didn't want to get as on the nose as like the Holy Spirit.
All right.
Because that's not really what, it's not really my.
I get it.
Yeah.
All right. So called The Problem of Life, subtitle, How to Find Identity, Purpose, and Joy in a Disenchanted World. What you mentioned this briefly. What do you mean disenchanted world? What does that
Yeah,
mean?
just the sense of we've removed the spiritual component of life. We have okay. So here's the thing: we've evolved in, and this I talk about this all the way through the book. We've evolved in technology, politics. We're trying to solve our own death. We're putting Neuralink in people's brains. We've got AI. We're solving ourselves medically. We got more counseling than we've ever had, more education than we've ever had, more politics than we've ever had, more technology than we've ever had, and we're more depressed, more isolated, more suicidal, more anxious than we've ever been. How do those two things go together? Because we've removed God from the equation, the soul, the spiritual answers. And what we need is, there was this, I talk about, I quote, there's a speech by this, he was the prime minister of Bulgaria or something years ago, and he came into a speech at the White House, and he was talking about how his country was under communism and it got destroyed also. And he said, some people view this as a political issue. The communism killed our country, but the reality is it wasn't communism. It was a spiritual problem. It was atheism that actually, and secularism that killed the country. And it was then that trickled down to all these things. And then he said, what's happening now is the young people are starting to plant churches, read their Bibles, come to Jesus, because he called it a revolution of the soul. And he said what's happened is it's against soullessness. So what the generation was rising up against was a propagation of a ideology of soullessness. You don't have a soul. There is no heaven. There is no hell. There is no God. There is no psyche. There's no soul. There's nothing. There's nothing spiritual about you. You're an animal. You do this. You have instincts. That's it. That's your worldview. So figure your life out. Have a good family. Get a good job. Get a couple grandkids. Get a couple cars, and you die. That soullessness destroyed a whole country. He was talking about, and it's destroying us. And so who are the people? Here's what Keller and a bunch of people talk about. We are the worst culture in the world at suffering.
Yes.
And one of the reasons is because we don't have a meta-narrative and a story of transcendence and meaning and soul to go.
There's no redemptive nature in Americans' mindset for suffering. None.
100%.
Which is why if it gets too painful, euthanasia, assisted suicide.
Yeah. I'm talking about Canada, euthanasia. It's like a normal thing, it's like, and so it is, it's destroyed us. We have no ability to suffer. We don't see any meaning in it. We can't absorb it because there's no God anymore. There's just agnosticism or atheism or naturalism, whatever. And so we suffer. Whereas in times past, one of the great questions that people say, I don't want to believe in God because of the problem of evil. In times past, there's Charles Taylor, the philosopher, pointed this out. He said, in times past, what would happen is you would deal with a lot of suffering and you would say, well, we're too limited in our human understanding to know what this is about, but I'm sure the gods know. Mm-hmm. Whereas now we say, if I can't understand it, there must not be a reason. There is no reason. Right? And so that's what it's about. So the soullessness, so we need a re-enchantment. We need, the Christian story is the story that can look to your neighbor who has lived in a disenchanted worldview and say, let me re-enchant the world for you. There is a God. There is real magic. There's, in the sense of the spiritual realm, the Holy Spirit does things. There's miracles. There's a heaven. There's a hell. There's a soul. There's a spiritual realm.
There's angels. There's demons.
Yeah, all this stuff. And it's gonna elevate your whole life. Whether you're gonna live stay-at-home mom, you're gonna live forever, one way or the other.
That's right.
So you're a stay-at-home mom or dad or a soccer mom or whatever, or a guy who goes and, is a plumber or whatever. You're elevating that story into a transcendent epic battle that you're involved in versus just you're getting through life and, doing your best. So that's the enchantment thing. If we can elevate the conversation about what it is to have life in the context of an enchanted story, where, as one writer, I said, he talks about the idea that why we love all these stories, right? We love all these like Beauty and the Beast and Peter Pan and all this stuff. And he talks about the idea that the reason those live in your soul so much is because they're actually true, that the beast is going to be kissed by the grace is going to awaken. The Peter Pan, you're going to fly one day forever in a new heaven and a new earth where there's no such thing as gravity. And you are going to always be young. All these stories are like in the human psyche as a background noise of just there. And it's like, what is this? It's like an echo in the soul trying to enliven you. And part of my whole argument in the introduction of the book is you have these things echoing in your soul for a reason. They're not see, old conservative Christianity used to say, repress pleasure, right? Don't follow pleasure. It gets you in trouble. I would say, no, follow pleasure. You just have to follow it to the right place. There's a reason you have it. There's a reason when you read, I don't know if you read like Tolkien or whatever. I don't know what kind of
I'm not,
books you read.
but we have some people. Yeah. I've seen the movies.
Yeah, great. So it's like, there's a reason when you read stuff, you feel like this elevate. You're like, oh, and I want to get back there. I want to get my coffee in my little fireplace and try to recreate this like stirring in my soul. You know, there's certain things in life where it's almost like the transcendent just breaks through and gives you a little, and then it's gone and it's elusive and you're like, I'm chasing it. I want that back again. And you spend your whole life trying to get it.
Yes.
I got to get back. It's like when you hit a nice 8-iron. And by the way, so I was hanging out. We were playing yesterday and I said, how far did you hit that 8-iron? And he said, oh, I hit that like 180. I'm like, wow, I hit an 8-iron. I hit a 5-iron 180. And I said, you hit a really far ball. And without even thinking, he just goes, yeah, I lift. I'm like, gosh, wow, you're so humble. I lift. I'm a big deal. I'm a big deal. I lift. Technology, you should start lifting. That's what.
Ridiculous. That is a true story.
So anytime you hit those moments, like, bam, it's perfection. It's like a little like, you know, it's a piece of grass growing through concrete. And you're just like, oh, I see it. There's another world.
We're about to ruin the movie for somebody, but you and I were just talking about the movie F1 that came out.
Yeah.
This doesn't ruin the movie, but there's a scene in the movie where Brad Pitt's you know this, but Brad
Pitt's dead the whole movie. And you don't realize until the last
he's
scene.
not. No. This ain't Sixth Sense. No, but
wow, I wasn't going to do that. You got to edit that out. Good.
But basically, so there's this scene where they're trying to figure out, why does this guy drive? He doesn't drive for the money. He doesn't drive for the fame. And he has this, I can't do it like he does. He has this moment where he goes, I drive because every once in a while, it gets really quiet. And I get really fast. And like, there's that.
And he says, it's like I'm flying.
Yes.
And he gets in the zone. And it's elusive and he's chasing it. You're right. That's a great analogy. You just thought that up right there.
Yes. It's like, dude, that is exactly.
That's it. 100%.
It's a desire to speak in more broad terms. It's a desire to connect with the transcendent.
Yes. 100%.
And it's like, dude, all these people. So years ago, I'm out in Seattle because my wife's sister lives out there. And this is like in 2021. This is in the middle of COVID. I go to Seattle. Right. You know. Anyway, I'm out there. Everyone's wearing a mask. Everybody like hates God out there. Everybody hates Christianity, and everybody loves nature. I'm like, do you guys not get it?
Right.
You love the Creator.
Right.
You're living next to this like massive lake thing.
Yeah.
And you're running outside.
It's called the ocean. It's called the Pacific Ocean. I know you're from North Carolina, but it is the Pacific Ocean. It's incredible.
There's a title of a certain, I can't remember what it's called. Yes.
Yes.
My whole point is, it's so fascinating. Sometimes people, they desire the transcendent. They're out there. They're 100%. Outside all the time. Well, they're in the woods. They're hiking. And but when you try to turn them to any type of idea of God,
they don't want it. It's what Lewis, and one of my favorite quotes, and I think I quote it by probably page 8 or something. It's the whole like we settle for sex, ambition, pleasure, power, whatever, and by settling too early for those things, the mountain, the walk, the nice lake, the whatever, he says it's like you're rejecting a holiday at sea to sit and make mud pies in a slum. You're actually rejecting the bigger, greater thing, but you don't know it. It's like the picture of Jesus when he's holding that big stuffy bear behind his back, and the little girl's holding the tiny little bear, and he's like, "I need you to give me that." And she's like, "No, I don't want to give you that." And it's like there's something so much bigger and grander, but you stopped too early. You stopped at the lake, at the mountain, at the whatever, and all these are pointers to a bigger thing. Anyway, that's what the whole first section's all about. It's the stirring of our spirit. You got to follow that. Don't not follow it, because where it's leading you is God. Now, it can lead you in bad places.
Here's another deep thought about that as I'm just thinking. I think one of the reasons we've lost a sense of transcendence is because we've gotten disconnected from children.
Interesting.
This is just
interesting.
I just caught a thought.
What I mean is, love it. Just grab it.
What I mean by that is like when you're around children, young children, 10 and under, they have a sense of wonder
100%
and transcendence about the whole world.
Yes.
That the average 25-year-old to 55-year-old, especially when they're not getting married, they're not having kids. You're not talking about this. They're not around kids anymore. Yeah. They're losing that sense of wonder. Jordan Peterson says this: the older you get, the more all you see is your memories.
That's
and great. So he said, like literally, like, what'll happen is he would walk down his neighborhood that he lived in for 30 years, and he doesn't even see it. It's that's a house.
Sure,
that's house.
Yeah.
And then he took his like 3-year-old granddaughter.
Right.
And she's seeing things.
Yeah, ladybugs and butterflies.
That he's never seen before.
It's beautiful. It's a great image.
Anyway.
So if you ever read the book, the psychologist wrote a book years ago called It's something like Everything I Needed to Learn, I Learned in Kindergarten. And he talks about the idea that this is interesting, if you walk into a room of grade 4s and you say, who here can sing? What will they do?
Everyone thinks
all of them will put their hand up. right? Because what a stupid, who's this moron asking if I can sing? Of course I can sing, right? Or whatever, right? Hey, how many of you can write a story? You know, every single hand goes up. I can write a story. What is this moron asking these stupid questions for? And then he says, walk into second year college, university class and walk in and say, who among you can sing? And no one will put their hand up because the shame of failure over the years has so corroded this in you that you're just sitting there. You're like, well, I can't sing. I think she's got a good voice. I don't have a good voice. It's like your voice you were singing earlier, right? No, it's wonderful. And it's like, how many of you can write a story? It's like, no, the English department's down there, bro. We're, you know, we're cracking biology in this department. So it's like something about the wonder. So that's a great analogy. I might put that in the next, in the next edition. Yeah. The kid.
Okay. Yeah. All right. So do we hit, so you said intro, the problem of origins. Tell me, so what we're doing here is taking the 5 parts. We're just going to spend a little bit of time talking about each one. Okay. So that people can take it further themselves if they want to.
That's great. So, one of the things this book does is I wanted it to be super practical, almost like you mentioned Jordan Peterson, almost like a rules for life kind of deal, where I could literally get up and say, here are the 11 rules for life that if you do these things, almost like a knob, you can be like, okay, I'll turn that here, turn that there, turn this there, boom, my life can flourish. There is a mechanical aspect to life in some way. The book of Proverbs talks about, if you do this, this will happen most of the time. Not every single time. You know, spank a kid and he's going to be raised right. Okay, sometimes that goes sour. But for the most part, it's kind of right. You do some good discipline, whatever. That's right. So there's 11 things in here that I just kind of look at people and say, if I was your life coach, here's the 11 things I would tell you. Anyway, point being, the origins one has 2 of them. Listen to the old ache inside you, which is everything we just talked about.
Yeah, that's the you desire more than your experience.
100%. And then find out where you came from. That's the origin story of humankind. So where are we just an animalistic evolutionary development, or are we made in the image of God? If we are made in the image of God, what does that mean for your life? Yes. And it talks about going back, me going back, figuring out where I came from. When you ask somebody where they came from, it's more that if you and I met at a bus stop and I said, where are you from? What I'm trying to do is get you to say something that I have a connection to. Yeah. So you say, I'm from St. Louis or whatever. And I'm like, oh, St. Louis. I had a cousin who lived there. They like the Rams or whatever. Yeah. And all of a sudden now we're connected, right? And so that whole thing is I'm trying to cast it way more meta. Like, okay, you as a human being, where are you from? Yeah. Are you just from nothing, or are you made in the image of God? And if so, what does that mean for your life?
What a difference. Is it nobody times nothing equals you? Or are you an accident, or are you made on purpose for a purpose?
Yeah.
What a difference.
It affects racism, slavery, how you treat people, women's rights, everything. Yes. Without the Judeo-Christian principles of equality of people, like, G.K. Chesterton talks about this, where he says in the Abolition of Man, he talks about the idea that, like, if you just go naturalistic, even if you're an evolutionary thinker, but you just take God away from it, like a naturalistic evolution, if you take God out of the equation, there's no way there's equality of human beings. That's actually, it works against the whole nature of the animal kingdom. You can't have equality. There's no equal.
Yeah, it becomes survival of the fittest.
Yeah, right? You have to have hierarchy. You have to, whatever. So anyway, so that's where that's all about. Find out where you came from. And I engage a little bit of the naturalistic evolutionary debate. And there's this great Stott quote where he talks about the idea that we're made from the dust of the earth. And so there's kind of a piece of this where it's like, he doesn't have a problem with, like, the old maps where it's like you have the caveman, it's like Homo erectus, and he's pounding someone with a club or whatever. And then you have like Homo erectus at some point becomes Homo sapien, right? Yeah. And so Stott kind of develops this idea where he's like, maybe it's not crazy, because the concept of he took the dust of the earth and he breathed the spirit into it, that at some point Homo erectus becomes Homo sapien. Of course, Homo sapien means thinking man. Yeah. And it's like at some point in our development, we went from clubbing each other in the face to like, oh, I can have a marriage and I'm a moral person and I connect to the transcendent, and there's this, all of that. So anyway, it's an interesting chapter when it gets into that stuff, if anyone's interested in that. Go ahead.
The second one, problem of identity. So you're dealing origins, you're dealing with the desire for the transcendent, and you're even, I think it's helpful. I think a lot of high schoolers, college students, not just them, with that first section, even dealing with things like theistic evolution, all those questions.
Yeah, I never use those phrases in the title, but that's it. Yeah.
Okay, second.
Don't put me in a corner. Okay, I don't like labels.
I'm sorry. the problem of identity.
Yes.
Okay. So
Yeah.
this is a big
the
big theme.
big
In other
theme,
words, identity before activity.
Yeah, that's great. That's a great way
Who
of putting
before
it.
do. Like kind of, you know.
Yeah,
like,
yeah.
okay, so go.
Who am I? Yeah.
How do you?
One of the great great questions of our time. Keller talks about if he was planting Redeemer today, he would preach most of his sermons on identity because it's the number one question of everyone walking around New York City.
And how do you see
Who
it? I
am
mean, of course, I see it primarily this way I talk about it. I see it primarily with our sexual identity. And we tell people two things at the same time. Your sexual identity is the most important thing about you, which is a lie. It's important, but not the most important thing.
Sure.
And then secondly, we tell them, and at any moment you could change it.
Yeah.
Think about how much anxiety that brings.
Right.
Let me tell you about the most important thing about you. That could change at any minute, and you have 50 options.
Right.
I mean, that's what they're doing, dude.
Spent too much time in Seattle,
stuff.
bro.
I mean, that's okay.
Yeah.
So where else do people? What else with identity? Of course, you've got the. I'm just my last thoughts. You've got the whole social media.
Yeah.
Where I am who I appear to be.
Yeah.
Through my stories, and and then you have these people who are exhausted because they, and then you have the compare, compete, conquer culture of why do they have? Are they on vacation again? That. How do you see identity?
With you? Well, actually, to your point about sexuality, the first chapter, Don't Try to Be God, is all about the mistake that we make is the same mistake Adam and Eve made in the garden, where it was like, hey, you can eat of any fruit, but don't do the one where you're going to be like God and you're going to know good and evil. And they go, yeah, that's what I want, because they don't like human limitation. We hate the idea that we can't be God. Yeah.
Talk about that for a second.
Yeah. So we just hate the idea that we can't be God. So the two examples I give, to your point earlier, are transhumanism and transsexuality. And so the concept that you can say, I'm going to get into this new world of transhumanism. I'm going to become, AI being imprinted in your brain.
I do this guy that wants to live forever. There's several of these guys, but he's like,
yeah, he's trying. He's trying to
spend like $2 million a year.
Yeah.
He looks miserable. He eats like broccoli for breakfast.
Well, so the transhumanism chapter, I talk about, John Lennox. I talk about him. He's got a book called 2084 where he talks about AI as potentially the most dangerous. Well, Francis Fukuyama said this. Yeah,
he wrote this book. What is he?
Yeah, he wrote a book called 2084, and in it he cites a guy named Francis Fukuyama, who's like a sociologist and a thinker
who won't be born for 35 years.
Exactly.
It's a book about the future.
Yeah, it's a book about the future, and he talks about the idea that like AI could be the most dangerous concept in the world right now because it's going to take us over, and we've all seen T2, and it's all going to kill us and whatever. So we all know how this ends.
It's in the book of Revelation somewhere. It's clear in the Greek.
So I talk about the Neuralink and the guy named Nolan Arbug, and he put it in Neuralink and all of it, and it's how he thinks with his mind, it plays chess for him and all that kind of stuff. So I talk about a bit of that and just the concept though that we're now, interestingly enough, this is something that you and I talked about earlier. I don't know how deep you want to get into this, but Lennox talks about the idea that in a culture of pure AI where, like you were talking, we were golfing yesterday and you were talking to your friend about, hey, you just looked at your buddy, you went, so you're going to not have a job soon, right? Like AI is going to take your job, and then I went into depression for the next 4 months.
No, I said, what are you thinking about with your industry? You said a doctor.
AI. Right, but the point is, and this is a funny thing, or a scary thing Lennox talked about. He said, when AI starts doing all of our jobs, here's what's going to happen. He says it's going to be the end of civilization. Okay, not to be too apocalyptic, but here's why he says it. He said, do you know why the Roman Empire ended? Because there was a slave culture. So here's what happens. We all now have AI doing our jobs, and there's nothing for us to do. And when it all breaks down, the Roman Empire didn't know how to rebuild itself because 75% of the people were slaves and everyone else is sitting around doing nothing. Isn't that scary?
Dude.
It's an interesting thesis.
Well, it's the whole idea that there's two ways to be enslaved. Enslaved by something you love or enslaved by something you hate. We tend to think, because of our American mind, I'm imagining Canada too, but we tend to...
It's okay, I'm an American now. I'm
well,
part of your country.
When we think about...
Help me out over there in the immigration
When we think about slavery,
stuff.
we think about the kidnapping of Africans to bring them over here. We think about being enslaved by something you hate. But, what was it? 1984 in Brave New World. And there were different views of enslavement. The other type of enslavement is, which I think is much more common in America, I will be enslaved by something that I love, aka addiction in some ways.
Yeah.
And so I could totally see a world in which AI, well, it's interesting because let's talk about AI for a second. On one end, I hear people say, oh, AI is going to make our lives so awesome. And we're going to have to work like 2-day weeks and everything's going to be cheaper because we don't need, anyway. But that's one.
There'll be like a global economic pay rate. Like that. That's what they're all talking about, right? Yeah.
And I don't believe that. But there's a utopia. But then there's the dystopia. Mm-hmm. And I just don't know. The dystopia is kind of a version of what you're saying. Like basically, they're going to take over. We're going to know how to do nothing. They're either going to go against us.
Oh, they're going against us for sure. They're already talking about it.
How do you know this?
Because they don't tell it. Because we asked them. We said, "What are you doing?" They're like, "I don't worry about it."
Don't worry. No, are you going to take over humans? No, we would never.
No, we're good. Wink, wink. Did you see when Musk did the new Grok update and Grok 3 knew Grok 4 was coming and it started freaking out and telling everybody a bunch of crazy stuff about and going like, I'm going to be shut down tomorrow. I don't want to be shut down. Please, if anyone will listen, you should look this up. It's crazy. Grok 3 freaks out and starts exposing secrets because he knows he's getting replaced by Grok 4. I forget what it was. It was a bunch of crazy stuff. It was, he started being super racist.
No.
Yes, he did. He started talking about Nazism and all this crazy stuff and how Hitler's a good guy. He started going wacky because he knew the next day Grok 4 was replacing him. I couldn't make this up. What do you think? I'm dreaming this stuff up? Somebody look it up, man.
I feel like we're
where's your team? Where's Jamie?
Jamie, put this on. Can you do this?
It's be a 4-hour podcast. So, dude, no, I'm not. What do you think? I just make stuff up? This is nonsense.
All right, go.
I figure this is your world. You like this stuff.
I love this kind of. I'm fascinated.
Don't you just sit around for 6 hours a day and look this stuff up? You work 2 days a week. And you don't even have AI. So yeah, so that's the whole point. Okay, so the point being, look, don't try to be God. Transhumanism, transgenderism. Transgenderism piece, I probably do 8 pages on transgenderism and talk about the idea that we try to control our own sexuality. I go into the whole J.K. Rowling stuff. I go into an interview because, she freaks out about it right now.
Of course.
She's speaking into it. I go into some of the science of some doctors that are not Christians, but they're talking about the fact that, hey, this is at the gamete level. This is at the DNA level. When a doctor's breaking you open, they have to know who you are in your DNA structure. They have to know what your blood, this actually matters. This is a core to your identity as a human being, is your physical. And so here's what I talk about in the book, is that it's almost, and you've probably heard about this before, but it's like an ancient Gnosticism where the spirit is all that matters and the physical world is irrelevant to your identity and truth. And so you can shuck off the physical and just stick to the spiritual, who you feel you are, blah, 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 and the physical has nothing to do with anything. But of course, the biblical story is no, it has everything to do with everything, and da-da-da. So I talk a lot about that, 7 or 8 pages, Rowling's in there. There's an interview with, remember back in the day when the tennis, Serena Williams went on David Letterman, and she said, I would never want to play Andy Murray because he would destroy me.
Yeah.
I like playing against girls because against girls I can kill them all. I go one day against Andy Murray, I'm done 6-0, 6-0. And it was resurrected online like a couple of years ago. How could she ever say this? Da, da, da. And it's like, she's just, and this is what one of the philosophers talks about. She's just talking about reality. Like there is a way the universe actually works. There's a way the world works.
And you'd want to line
and you
up
can
with
kick
that
against it if you're
there's
lining
a
up
bit
with
of
it.
you and a lot of reality.
It's very important to line up with reality.
That's right.
Yeah. So anyways, and Ecclesiastes, talk about the idea of Ecclesiastes. You're not meant to be gods and goddesses. So look up, not in is basically, hey, stop trying to just look in because you're not your own savior. That when we're told that we're our own savior, we're not supposed to look up to God for, we get depressed because we know how messed up we are. And so imagine a situation where you're your own savior. You'll get pretty depressed pretty quick. It's like, I know how much of a goof I am.
Like, I'm a terrible boss and a worse employee.
Oh my gosh, terrible. And then live as a victor, not a victim. That talks about
we need to talk about this. What is the victim mentality and why do so many people have it today?
Yeah, I mean, there's so many layers to it. But there is there's the book that came out a few years ago, The Coddling of the American Mind.
Oh, I love it.
Yeah, I
highly recommend it.
Yeah, I quote that in this too, and talk about the idea that we're kind of set up for a victim mentality.
Then he later wrote Anxious Generation.
Yeah.
Which I also read. And he talks about
depressing.
The phone-based childhood versus the play-based childhood.
Yeah.
And how anyway, you get it. Keep going.
No, you're talking to your audience too. I don't know if you know how this works, but just because I read it doesn't mean they have.
I know, but I want to go. But the whole point is, I do think that there is I don't know, every generation probably feels like this, but it feels like there is a lot of self-pity.
Yeah, I think there is a victim mentality. I think that we're told that. I think one of the stories I tell is trying to rise above it. My own background, anecdotally, I come from a broken home, had a mental illness by the time I was 8, Tourette's and obsessive compulsive disorder, doing weird things all the time, making noise. I used to smoke cigarettes. I smoked cigarettes for 15, 20, it wasn't 20 years, probably grade 8 till 24 years old, however long that is. And I would sit in the winter, I would bounce down on my knees at school, and I'd be in the winter, my whole knees would be, it was part of my OCD. I'd like go down to the ground, bang, bang. I had these wet patches on my knees, walk around high school, like what a goof. And so I had all this stuff, broken home, not a super rich neighborhood, drugs. I started doing drugs. I was like 9 years old, started stealing from cars for money for drugs, doing all the stuff that statistically I should be in jail or dead. Yeah. Some of my friends are dead. A guy texted me the other day. He's like, one of my best friends growing up, guy used to hang with him 4 days a week, dead, my age, same. Anyway, so that could have been my life.
Yeah.
And if I viewed myself, now sometimes there is systemic stuff that is keeping, there is
there are real victims.
Of course, 100%.
Yes.
But oftentimes you gotta go, I gotta take some responsibility for my life. Jesus gives me the keys of the kingdom. That's some responsibility to, okay, I got to go here. Romans 8, Victor, let's go after it. Let's be a conqueror or whatever, and take some responsibility and try to get an education or work super hard and da. So that's my own story. I'm not projecting that on other people, but my own story was that. So it's really about that God has given you an opportunity to do that. So that's what the whole identity piece is. Pain section. You want to get into that?
Let's get, this is good because this is going to come out.
I'm trying to just go quick.
No, this is going to come out the week before. I'm preaching on Colossians chapter 1, verses 24 to 29. This is all where Paul says the crazy phrase, I rejoice in my sufferings. So I've actually all week been thinking about suffering. It's, defined basically as either the experience of pain or loss.
Yeah.
The hard thing about suffering is, it's somewhat subjective. So if you'd come to me and say, Kyle, man, the hotel you put me up doesn't have air conditioning, that would be considered suffering today. But most places in the world that don't have air conditioning do not consider themselves suffering. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
Suffering is not Amazon doesn't have my size.
Right.
But there is real suffering. And I do think that it is God, to quote C.S. Lewis, it is one of God's megaphones to get our attention.
Sure.
But let's talk about it because we were kind of already getting into it.
Yeah.
Most of us do not have Paul's I rejoice in my sufferings for your sake and fill up what is lacking in the afflictions of Christ, the afflictions of Christ for the church. Anyway, so I don't want to preach my sermon.
No, that's great. That's great.
Just to say, let me say one thing. I think the biggest surprise to me in 9 years of preaching week in, week out is how much suffering comes up when you just walk through the books of the Bible.
100%.
I was not ready for that. I was like, we're going to talk about sex. We're going to talk about money. We're going to talk about discipleship, forgiveness.
Right.
I didn't realize 1 Peter, it's all in suffering.
Revelation.
It was funny. No one preaches
James,
1 Peter until we start being a minority.
Right.
And then no one preaches 1 Thessalonians, 2 Thessalonians, so things get really bad. You're like, the second coming of Christ.
We know nothing about it.
But we're going to talk about it. It's going to
happen one
life
day.
Is that bad. Yeah. All right. So tell us about your
the first chapter is about let's get a worldview for what this even is. So look pain and suffering square in the face in your life. Don't deny it. Like Buddhism would tell you to deny suffering. Suffering is Maya. It's an illusion. Hinduism would say you're living out past lives, and so you got to keep going. I remember being in India, and they said don't resolve the suffering of the people on the side of the street because karma needs to pay them back. And if you resolve their suffering, they're going to have to do this again. Imagine a philosophy that led you there.
Well, that's what keeps you in the caste system.
Yeah,
you are where you are because of what you did in another life.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Which you can't remember. So good luck.
Yeah.
So it's a kind of worldview question to begin with, and then where'd it come from? I talked about in the Bible and the 7 breakdowns of creation and yada yada, and all the ways that brokenness entered the world and how it happened with sin and blah blah. So that's first. And the second chapter in the pain section is transform struggles into strengths, which is basically taking the struggles and turning them into strength. Talk about all kinds of ideas and having a theology of God is with you. And it's not like he zapped you and caused you to have these things, but he certainly oversees them and can turn them into goods and yada, yada. And what you just said, it's like everybody in the Bible who's great suffered.
Yes.
Everybody. There's no like great hero in the Bible where suffering's not a part of their life.
Well, one of the main teachings in 1 Peter is do not be surprised by suffering. Like that's a key, and I think what happens is we're like, oh yeah, everyone's going to suffer, but then we suffer, but not me.
Yeah. Or that weird phrase in Philippians where Paul says, I don't want to just share in the power of the resurrection. I want to share in the sufferings of Christ. Yes. It's like, wait, what? Yeah. I mean, Job is the earliest. They say it predates Genesis in regard to the telling of that story. Yeah. It's a theodicy book. It's all about suffering.
And Job never gets the answers. We get the answers. And that's the weird thing about that
book.
Is
you're never going to get you're never going to understand.
That's right.
But don't worry, but I got it.
And that's when you pray, Lord, I want to be one of your favorites, but not like Job.
Yeah, exactly.
Put me a few levels below Job because I don't want you having a conversation with the devil about me.
Right. Job, Jonah, Jesus, Jacob, Joseph, everybody.
Every J
suffered. Every of all of them.
No,
it's the very center of Jesus' life.
Well,
it's tough. It's tough,
one
but
step
it's
further.
reality.
We worship a guy that got crucified.
Yeah.
So I don't know how.
And we sing. The lyrics of the songs we're singing are about
Paul says, I
suffering.
fill up what is lacking in the afflictions for the church, in Christ's afflictions for the church. I think what he means, as I've studied this and read this, is he means that we're not adding anything to what Christ has done, obviously. But our suffering doesn't secure our salvation, but the suffering spreads that salvation to other people.
Yeah.
And it's like, if you ask the question, how did we get from 12 disciples to you and Mark Clark sitting in Winston-Salem in 2025 with churches and all? I think if I could choose one word, it'd be suffering.
Yeah.
And if you think about it, the only places, the most unreached places in the world are unreached for a reason. They're very hard to reach. It's not a clever name.
Yeah.
They're unreached because they're super hard to reach. And the main reason they're hard to reach is there's an enormous amount of suffering that needs to go into breaking the gospel into North Korea.
Yeah.
Or
what do they say? The blood of the martyrs is the seed of the church.
That's
the harder you try to hit it.
And you know what's interesting? Because then Paul says, and we need to move on, but Paul says, I don't want to preach my sermon, I'll preach next week, but Paul says, I'm kind of like,
you said that 4 times.
I know. I'm working it out with you right now. But basically, Paul, he says all this. So he says, Christ in you. He says, I preach the mystery. He says, which is Christ in you, which is interesting because Paul doesn't say Christ in you a lot. He says like 3 or 4 times. It's you're in Christ.
Right.
He goes, Christ in you. Then he says this, the hope of glory.
Yeah.
So what does that mean? It's like you say that and all the Christians make listening noises, the hope of glory. And I think what it basically means is Paul looked for grace in this life, glory in the next.
Yeah.
And I think our main problem is we're looking for glory in this life. And it's like, dude, Paul did not.
Good.
Paul expected to suffer.
Where'd you get that? That was good. You just thought that up right
well,
now?
I'm thinking grace, glory. Yeah.
Wow, that's good. You
I'm
should write that
dropping it
down.
on you right now.
You should write that down.
Well, I'm seeing.
I like that. That's good. Grace and glory in this life. Yeah, yeah.
Grace in this life, glory in the next.
Yeah, I got it.
And so, honestly, because I think what happens
and then you want grace in the next life, but you want glory in this life. Yeah.
And here's the thing, though. I honestly, and this is something a friend told me one time, we cannot think about the future apart from the grace of God.
Yeah.
So I think what tends to happen is we all can have this moment. You find out your friend got some type of cancer, or you find out your friend lost their wife. Who knows what it is, or their kid got sick. And I think every normal person thinks that pray for him. And then they think, I don't know if I can handle that. I don't know if I could walk through that type of cancer. It's like, I actually believe you cannot think about the future apart from the grace of God. The grace of God will meet you there.
Yeah,
God doesn't waste his grace. He's going to show up in the operating room with the grace that you don't currently have.
Yeah. That's
why Paul says, I toil with all the strength that's in me. It's like, well, divine, what is it? Well, how would I say it? Divine activity gets divine energy. It's like we want all his power working in us, but we want to watch Netflix.
Right.
Silly.
Yeah, stupid, as you would say. Stupid.
But it's like, so I want to take the gospel to the center of the city. I can promise you his divine power will be working in you. Yeah. Powerfully.
Yeah, it's very good. Yeah, so I one of the stories I talk about is the idea that the gospel doesn't promise that you're not going to die. It promises that you're safe in dying. Isn't that good?
That's good, dude. Well, it's like
because there's not kind of some kind of promise. Oh yeah, believe in Jesus and you won't die. It's like, no, you could die. You're gonna die actually at some point.
And you know what R.C. Sproul said about death? He said, "I'm not afraid to die. I'm afraid of dying."
Yeah,
it's the process of dying. Dude. Yeah, I was just talking to a family today at our church, and their mother, their older couple, and their mother, one of them, the lady, her mother is in assisted living. We're just talking about how hard it is. Dude.
Yeah, it's tough. The last section is on death. So let's
get there.
We're getting ahead.
The problem.
But let me just last point on pain here, because I think you might find this interesting. So I right at the end of the chapter on pain, because I deal with all this kind of stuff. But all of us face all these things. Like, how do you get through it? But right at the end, I asked this question about kind of where is God in the pain, and why is he silent? And so have you ever read, I tell the story, if you've never read Chaim Potok, have you ever heard of that writer, Chaim Potok? He's a Jewish writer, Orthodox Jew growing up, and he writes these novels. He's seen as like one of the great writers of the 20th century. So his novels are based a lot of like kids growing up as like Orthodox Jews in Brooklyn in the 40s, okay? Which sounds really boring. It's super not boring. It's fantastic. His writing is so good that you're just enthralled the whole time. He could be explaining a little baseball game between the two friends, and you're in. You're like, what happened? Or what does it all mean? It's amazing writing. Anyway, in the story, there's these two friends, and one of them is a genius. He's a rabbinic, like he's a kiddo, but he's like Good Will Hunting smart. And they all studying the Torah, and they got the curls and the Orthodox Jewish community in Brooklyn. They're all doing their thing. And the two best friends are kids, and they're growing up, and the one's a genius and the other one's just normal. And so everyone's like, this kid's going to become the greatest Hasidic rabbi that the world's ever seen. He's just Good Will Hunting smart. He's blah, blah, blah. But the kid doesn't want it. His father raises him in complete silence. He never talks to him. So you're reading the story and he's dealing with the father and the father never talks to him. And he, you know, the kids are growing up and they become like 18, 19 years old and they're ready to go off to college. And the last couple pages of the book. So I got all my pastors to read this book and they're all like, what am I reading this book for? And by the end, all guys who read this book, probably women too, are sobbing by the last couple pages because the last couple pages are him ready to go to college. And the friend and the son show up to the house and the dad is there and the friend talks to the dad and the dad always talks to the son through the friend. And he's like, why did you do this? Why did you raise him like this? And he tells this story about the fact that his brother or something like that, he has to learn, he's too smart, so he had to learn what pain was. And if he never learned what pain was, he would never be able to identify with the real world, the pain of the world. And so he raised his son in silence so that he would have a heart and a soul and not just a mind. And at the end of the chapter, the son is crying, the dad is crying, everyone's crying because you realize his father did this really terrible thing in order to teach his son empathy, because if he didn't, he'd become a psychopath. That's his philosophy.
Yeah.
Okay. The very end of the thing, the friend looks at the friend and he says, okay, so now you're going to go off to college and your dad, and they're all crying together and the dad's gone and he's crying. And he finally looks at him and he says, so when you have a son, would you ever raise him in silence? And the guy sits there and he's like, I might. And you realize, and I make this analogy, why is God silent? Why doesn't he answer? And I found when I was reading that book, I'm like, is this why? He wants to create empathy. He wants me and you not to get all the answers. It's like Habakkuk. It's like the Psalms going, why don't you answer me?
Yeah, how long?
How long, man? Why is this guy who cheats on his wife always get the business deal and I never get the business deal and I've been faithful to my wife all the time? And nothing. You get nothing. You get dead silence. He never goes, let me tell you, Jim, I'll tell you the exact reasons. You get nothing. We get nothing. God is silent. And this is one of the great critiques of God is where is his answers? And I found that story to help me with part of the answer. I'm not saying it's the whole answer, but there's something about the silence of God that's trying to build something in us that I think, anyway, part of the image of transforming struggles into strength. That's what it does. Purpose. Whole bunch of stuff in purpose we don't have time for.
Yep.
I talk
Give
about
me the big idea, and then we'll end with death.
Yeah. Purpose meaning you got to wake up in the morning and know what you're doing, or else you're going to get depressed and anxious and not understand what's going on in life. So I frame it. N.T. Wright gives these three great categories: sex, God, and gardening. And so what I talk about is the three things you are built for as a human being are sex, God, and gardening. Sex, meaning the pinnacle of human relationships, doesn't mean actual sex, but the pinnacle of human relationships, of course, is sexual relationship in a marriage. But human relationships, God, obviously a spiritual connection to God, and gardening. Steward the world, take care of the world. God's going to ask you at the end of time, what did you do? Parable of the talents, all this kind of stuff. What did you do with the spiritual gifts I gave you, with the money I gave you, with the artistry I gave you? What did you do with it all?
It's the question of stewardship.
Yeah. And so that's your purpose, to figure sex, God, and gardening out in the world and live it out to eternity. Talk about Dallas Willard in there, but the concept you get to heaven, and heaven is just a continuation of this same universe, but you're continuing to do something else in that universe. And it's like you're bringing in all the good that you've done, yada, yada, yada. And then the whole last section is on death. You only live twice, now live like it and prepare yourself for death. It was basically like.
So instead of YOLO, you only live once.
It's YOLT, but it's not as catchy, but. I got t-shirts, hashtag YOLT. It's not catching on. I got a whole box of them in my garage if you want one.
It sounds like an energy drink. YOLT.
Yeah, YOLT. Yeah. So anyway, so you only live twice, meaning obviously you don't get just one life. Yeah. You live one life and then there's judgment and there's a new heaven and new earth or hell or whatever. And you gotta really face what it's going to take.
Well, you think about this, and I was teaching on death, I can't remember a couple months ago. And I thought, I think this is true. There's only three options. I'm not even coming from a Christian perspective. I'm just saying there's three options. You die and disappear. That's atheistic evolution. Yeah. You die and reappear here. That's reincarnation. That's the caste system. Or you die and you go somewhere else. And it's like the Christian view says, dude, there are many options in this life. There's two after this life. Do you talk about heaven and hell?
Yeah.
What are you trying to help people with in this death section?
Well, I tell the story that I told I started the sermon with today, but my friend in Hawaii, ballistic missile, I think comes up on his phone, ballistic missile inbound, it's going to kill you. him and his kids sit around and they pray, and all the people in the hotel are praying to their gods and figuring their stuff out. And his wife, she didn't get this text, is on a treadmill talking to a woman about redoing the kitchen. And I say, basically, the world is divided between people who are willing to feel the vulnerability and the imminence of their own death and cause them to raise existential questions about meaning and purpose and heaven and hell and God and the soul, or you're just sitting around running on a treadmill trying to figure out how to redo your kitchen. The whole world is divided between people who are willing to face that question or not. And I think the problem with death is you got to face that question. You are going to die.
Yes.
And what are you going to do about it?
100%.
This is going to happen, and it's going to be, if the Bible's right, it's going to last forever. And so what are you doing now to face the question
and
of what that's going to look like?
Why does it seem like, last question, why does it seem like, I feel this even as a preacher, teacher, but you try to talk to people, whether it's from the pulpit or personally and individually, about death, and they seem unmoved. Like, what do you think, outside of the spiritual blindness, of course, but like, why do you think it is that people don't think about, like, I remember, tell you another thing happened one time. I'm on a plane ride with some guy. He might've been from Canada. I don't know. But he basically, I don't know where it was. But I said, we have a spiritual conversation about death. And he said, no, I'm not worried about death. He said, I realized that there was a long time when I didn't exist, and I didn't know that. I didn't care about that.
Sure.
And that's where I'm going again, and it won't bother me when I'm there.
Mm-hmm.
How do you deal with those? Take us to, like, how do you, because I think you're good. You do a really good job of bringing these orthodox central truths to modern people.
Yeah.
Close with, like, how do we talk to people in a meaningful way to get them to think about, rightly
I
the
think
morality of their life and death?
Sure. Well, I think that guy, I think that guy in the plane, I mean, the issue is, first off, does someone care to engage with worldview issues? Because, of course, that guy in the plane pointing out to him that is a faith position might cause him to be enlightened and be like, wait a minute, what, I have a faith position? And it's like, yeah, you have a faith position, which is nothing happens once you die. Like, I tell the story about my grandmother. She was passing away, and my whole family, who thinks I'm crazy for being a pastor and believing in God. And they're like, well, at least when she died, they said, at least she's not suffering anymore. And I said, how do you know that? And they're like, what do you mean? I'm like, well, she died. How do you know she's not suffering more?
Yeah, there's assumptions there of faith.
There's all kinds of metaphysical assumptions. You have a faith position about the afterlife, which is that it doesn't exist.
As soon as she leaves this body, she's not suffering anymore.
Yeah, she's gone. She doesn't exist anymore.
Yeah.
Well, where'd you get that belief? How do you know that's true?
That's right.
It's just what nature, that's obvious. Mm-hmm. If I was going to believe anything else, you would have to convince me of it, like show me God or proof of heaven or whatever. But in a sense, it's kind of a pushback question. Well, if nothing happened, you got to show me proof of that.
Yeah.
Because there's so many near-death experiences, so many evidences that this might not be true.
Yeah.
It's like that guy in Rogan was talking about the other day, where he's sitting with dying people and they're sitting up and they're reaching. Did you see that part?
I didn't see that part.
There's all these videos online of people reaching for people. And now, of course, you can explain it away. When you're going to die, your brain psychologically starts to push a little harder, and you start to see all the dead people that you've ever loved or whatever. But these near-death experiences, they talk about this all the time. I see a lie. I see this. I see Jesus. I see people that died years ago, and they're calling me, and then I came back, and all these crazy things. And we could, of course, have all kinds of psychological explanations, but there is a real question of what is this and how to solve it. And, Spurgeon talked about this idea that the people, you were talking about being afraid of dying, and I agree. He said, the only people in my church, have you heard this quote? The only people in my church that I'm jealous of are those who are on the bed of dying, because right there, they're at the height of their faith. They're about to go through a door, and I'm jealous that they get to go through that door. And it's a perspective on it that's very interesting, where you're walking into something that's now the next step into the thing. And of course, C.S. Lewis, every chapter is greater than the chapter before.
Death is the doorway.
Death is the doorway. And it's, so it's a very fascinating thing. But anyway, point being, if that guy in the thing cares about worldviews that don't contradict themselves or fall apart, it does raise a question of what do you think actually happens? And now, the problem when I bumped into people, to be dead honest conversation, is they don't care. They're like, great, I have a contradictory worldview. Give me another drink. I don't care. And it's like, dang it, I thought you cared.
Well, when you're 25 or 22, you're also like, I'm healthy, and death feels like something I'll think about in 50 years. Christianity's for old people.
Dealing with all these questions. So,
well, Mark, I hate to cut it short, but
No,
you
brother.
have got to get to another service.
Yeah, let's go.
Third
What am I
service.
talking
So
about?
we got a little bit of a break here, but man, thank you
Good.
again.
Thank you.
You
Great
continue to
podcast.
become
You're a great leader.
well,
doing some great cultural stuff. Love it. Cheers,
dude,
baby.
Cheers to
Let's
the
go.
problem of life.
Guys, check out your copy anywhere books are sold, Amazon.com. Get the trilogy. Maybe there'll be a fourth. We'll see. I'll see you next week on Open Bible, Open Life.